Hey, welcome back to the Spector Creative channel, and if you've been a big fan or a frequent viewer of this channel, you know that I'm big into language. Well, I do teach a course in learning hieroglyphics every Sunday morning. It's called Doodling with Purpose. And if you haven't checked it out, it's worth checking out because, hey, if you're going to doodle in your spare time, you might as well do it with purpose. Well, also there's not that many courses on learning Egyptian, and pretty much you could just pick up a book, like the Wallace Budge's books. But after all,
Must have used Budge. I don't know why they keep reprinting his books.
all right. So enough plugging my other series. The language I want to talk about today is the language of toys, and that's probably why you're here, because you're a toy fan. Most of my videos are about toys, and that's because I'm a big fan of toys. In fact, so much so that I rearranged my whole life so I could work in toys. Well, I shouldn't say rearranged, as much as I was blessed with a career in the toy industry, which is still ongoing. And it's partially because I'm also a toy collector. I love toys in my personal life, and being able to bring this into my work life has given me a very unique perspective. And getting to be sort of a toy executive, if you will, at multiple companies, some large companies, some small companies, well, it's taught me a lot about the language of toys and the words that are used. And a lot of times they're very different from the words that are used by collectors, sometimes describing the same thing. But since I throw these words around a lot in videos, I thought it would be really helpful to make a video going over industry words. So things like 5 POA or deluxe figure, while we refer to toys like this, that tends not to be the words that are used by the actual toy makers. And toy makers have a lot of jargon that is not used anywhere outside of a toy sales room. So let's jump right in and kind of go through some terms that are used by the toy industry. No particular order in this case, just kind of the order that I put them down in this video. So nothing is more important than another. They're just, unique words and an inside look in how the toy industry describes the product that they make. All right, rooted hair. You can probably guess what this is, and no, it's not the roots of your hair that have to be dyed to avoid showing their true color like, people do. I'm talking about toys that have hair as opposed to a sculpted hair. They actually have fabric or, cloth, and this can include action figures like Malbolgia here. Rooted hair is essentially threaded into a doll's head. So Barbie looks like this without hair. She has a bunch of holes in her scalp. And rooted hair is put on by a machine called a dolly. Get it? Because it puts hair on dolls. This is actually the machine, and it's very much like a sewing machine. And you run the doll's head through the machine, and the needle, just like in a sewing machine, goes up and down, threading the hair through the holes. So doing a full doll's head like this takes about 1 to 2 minutes, depending on the style of the hair. And then, of course, the hair gets styled after that. But that's why it's called rooted hair. Play patterns. Okay, I've made a whole video about play patterns and how toy companies look very much into the scientific way that children play, both with others and in groups and with different toys. This is all done so they can have a diversified portfolio and have product that appeals to the different way children play. So I'll run through them pretty quick because I did a whole video just about play patterns. The first one being what's called wheel play, which essentially is playing with things with wheels. And it could be trains, it can be airplanes, and mostly it's cars. It tends to be a younger skewing play pattern, and for boys. A play pattern that's more for girls is nurturing play, and this comes from girls wanting to emulate mommy and daddy, just like mommy and daddy take care of them. And it is a play pattern that basically goes back to the beginning of how kids play. And much like wheels play being something that is a preferred play pattern of boys, nurturing play tends to be a preferred play pattern of girls because, real shocker, boys and girls' brains function differently. And that's something from science. That's not like a social justice warrior thing. Another way that girls play with dolls, but in a different way, is called hair play. And essentially, it is exactly what it sounds like. It's styling, brushing, combing, running your hand through a doll's hair. What can I say? This is something that especially young girls love. And on the flip side, something boys love is what's called doinky doink play. Yep, that's the term that the industry uses. It's basically when you take two objects and smash them together and they fight. Doinky doink. What can I say? I guess it's better than fighting play or action figure play. tends to be the word used. There's, of course, other play patterns that are more for, say, genderless play patterns, things like art, that's all about creativity and expression and doesn't really focus on one gender or one age. It tends to transgress all of those things. Another play pattern like this is puzzle play, with the sense of accomplishment and feeling like, oh, I completed the puzzle. This is also something that works great between kids and adults, and it's something that can be used in both a therapeutic and education setting. Likewise, board game play or game play is something that both challenges the mind and, again, is something that children and adults and groups of children can come together and do as a structure, as family game night or friend game time. Construction play, which a lot of us think of as Lego play, it's not restricted just to Lego blocks. It could be any type of construction toy. Construx is my personal favorite one. Go watch the video on that. But much like puzzle play, it's all about a sense of accomplishment, but it's also very much like art, where it's look what I made, because construction play doesn't have to necessarily be about building one thing, although there's obviously those of us who want to build one thing. In fact, that tends to be how boys play with construction play. They want to build what's on the box and follow the instructions, whereas girls want to build things that are more open-ended, hence the Lego Friends line that usually is absent a fourth wall or even a third wall, and has more open space for the characters to interact. Just different ways genders play with construction. Battle in a box. Here's an interesting one. So most of us who collect action figures know that for the most part, action figures tend to be single-carded. You get a character and their accessories. Well, occasionally you get what we would call a two-pack, but you'll notice that frequently, and very frequently, two-packs are composed of a hero and a villain. This is done very deliberately because when the toys are sold into retail to the toy buyer, if you will, at Target or Walmart or RIP Toys R Us, a lot of times the toy will be sold in and said, well, this is a good toy for you to take, Mr. Toy Buyer, because it's a battle in a box, meaning a child can get this item as a gift and they can instantly play with it. It's not just, one Batman or one Joker figure. They can have an adventure of versus, of conflict. Not so much with things like this where you get three heroes. And while you do see toys like this, when you have a battle in a box, and it can range from Batman versus Joker to Tim versus the Tyrannosaurus Rex, all about conflict play. Obviously, the most iconic is when you have a, arch rivals packaged together. But yes, there is an absolute psychological reason this is done, because when you play Doinky Doink play, you like to have a battle. Carry forward. So carry forward is a term that the toy industry uses when you have a product and you issue it the following year and make no changes to the product whatsoever, but you might make changes to other aspects, specifically the packaging or the trade dress. And yes, I know nitpickers may note that Darth Vader here actually did get a different cape. It's the cape from the Shadows of the Empire 2-pack, which was a battle in the box versus Shizor from Shadows of the Empire. But let's just pretend it's the exact same Darth Vader for sake of argument. So here you have the orange card going to a green card. This is called a carry forward, which is different from a refresh. So a refresh is when you take the exact same toy, but it now comes with something different. In this case, it's now a freeze frame. So it affects the X factory, the price of the toy, because you have to account for the cost of now the extra piece, the freeze frame. It's not just a packaging change, you've added additional piece count. There's another one, piece count. That's how many objects a toy comes with. In this case, Darth Vader has two, lightsaber and freeze frame. A redeco, well, toy collectors use this a lot. It's when you have the exact same tool, the exact same mold, but you issue it in a different color. Whether or not the packaging changes. It could be a refresh carry forward. It could be also a redeco refresh, where Batman here now has a new accessory. So same tool, same Batman tool, but by giving him a brand new tooled accessory, in this case the Wonder Pig, you have now changed the product. Much like Darth Vader got the freeze frame, Batman now gets a Wonder Pig. But the figure also gets redecoed, versus that Darth Vader was the same figure. So he was a carry forward. This Batman is a redeco. So yeah, there's a lot of different combinations, and it all comes from the expense of tooling. these giant molds used to make things like the two shells that we in the future to use the restroom, well, they cost a lot of money, upwards to $100,000. So you want to maximize it. Choch. All right, so Choch is an action figure's accessory, but not every action figure's accessory is called Choch. If it's a signature weapon, like Captain America's shield, then it's referred to as their accessory or signature weapon. But if an action figure comes with just a whole bunch of stuff, especially stuff that can't really be identified, that's sort of generic or isn't a signature weapon, like Thor's hammer or Cap's shield or Darth Vader's lightsaber. So if it's anything other than a signature weapon, it's pretty much referred to as Choch. WWE figures are notorious for this because they come with a lot of sometimes just stuff, random stuff like pipes and 2x4s or trash cans. So even though we might recognize that and say, oh, that's a trash can and a trash bag, it's still referred to as Choch. So it'll say this action figure comes with 3 pieces of Choch. Just a way they're sold into retail and explained to the buyer. Feature figure. So this is something pretty self-explanatory. It's a figure that has, well, a feature. And most often it's things like lights and sounds or something like karate chop action, if you will, where you can press a button, squeeze the legs, hit a trigger, and it causes the arm to go up and down or punch or something like that. But what's really interesting, though, is it has to be in an assortment or a single figure. So something like this R2-D2 that had lights and sound, is not considered a feature figure because he's part of a basic figure assortment. The figure has to be in its own assortment to be considered a feature figure. This is just a basic figure that happens to have a light up. So Flash here is part of a deluxe feature assortment. It could be an assortment of one, or it could be an assortment of multiple, but everything in that assortment has features because that's the way a toy buyer buys in. They say, okay, I'll take the feature assortment and the basic assortment. If the basic assortment happens to have a figure that has lights and sounds, hey, bonus, that's cool. But because the other figures in this assortment, the Star Wars assortment, didn't have lights and sound, it's not considered a feature figure because it's not part of a feature figure assortment. It's part of the basic figure assortment. I know, kind of odd, but again, that's how it's sold in. Plus up. So this is a term used when you take an existing basic figure versus a feature or a deluxe figure with additional pieces of Choch, and you plus it up with extra deco, more Choch, more stuff, essentially. Usually it's because it's got more deco or soft goods, which is fabric, added to the figure. So Comic-Con convention figures are notorious for this because basic figure with a new head and more paint, well, it's a plussed up version of a basic figure. Show to shelf. So again, a term used to sell in figure lines to toy buyers. They will be explained, they're explained to at a toy fair, that something like this He-Man figure here is show to shelf. This is exactly what He-Man looks like in the new CGI show. I mean, as a toy, if you will. And this is the figure that represents what kids see. Versus this toy here, He-Man never actually rides this motorcycle in the show. It's still a great toy, but it's not show to shelf because it's not actually something directly from the show. So toy lines can either be show to shelf, imaginary, and that's because, sometimes characters don't appear in a film, but it will appear in a toy line. So this Batman here, show to shelf. This is what Batman looked like in Batman the Animated Series, at least as far as his colors go. Versus there were other figures in this assortment that were not show to shelf, that were just colorful versions of Batman to give more variance on shelf. So he would not be show to shelf. Sometimes all the figures in the assortment are show to shelf. Sometimes it's a mix. Customized program. So we know this better as an exclusive. And I know it is the bane of a lot of collectors' existence when a toy or an assortment of toys can only be found at one retailer, whether it's permanent or for a small window. Sometimes this is because a particular character can only be sold at one retailer. I mean, Bullseye the Target dog would never show up at Walmart. But most of the time, exclusives, or as the industry calls them, customized programs, are done as part of the deal to get a retailer to take a full line. So they'll say, oh, if you carry my entire line of Pops or whatever, we will give you exclusive versions. This is done because it will draw customers into your store, or what the industry called doors, not stores. So this is done because they know when shoppers are at these doors, they're going to wind up getting a lot more, not just the exclusive, even if they can't find it. All right, so here endeth the first lesson. Did I hit all the terms you've had questions about? Are there questions you still want answered, terms that I can define? Let me know in the comments below. Share this video, subscribe to the channel, ring the bell. All that stuff helps the YouTube algorithm, which tells YouTube to share it with more people, and it's all about sharing toy love and info. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you guys next time.